3 spine-chilling true horror stories revealed, sinister events that haunted the unexplained. Lisa had always kept a close eye on her quaint suburban neighborhood outside of Detroit. Life there felt predictable, each day marked by the patterns of leaves rustling and children laughing. But on that ominous night, as the sun melted into the horizon, her heart began to race. A panicked call came through from her 10-year-old son, Miles, his voice quaking through the receiver as he begged her to come home quickly. "There's a man, in the shadows," he stammered, fear gripping him tight. Lisa hesitated, brushing off his worries as just the vivid imagination of a child. But deep down, a cold chill whispered otherwise. After finishing her shift at the late-night diner, exhaustion coated her like a heavy shawl. But around the corner she went, the familiar street signs now turning into distorted shapes in her mind. When she pulled into her driveway, something felt wrong. The front door, usually locked tighter than a drum, stood slightly ajar, revealing shadows lurking where familiarity once reigned. Jake, her loyal golden retriever, sat cowering in the corner, his fiery spirit reduced to a whimpering ball of dread. "Jake!" she exclaimed, rushing inside. Flickering lights cast eerie shapes across the walls, twisting her sanctuary into a nightmare. "Mom," Miles whispered, barely lifting his gaze. His hands trembled around a yellowed newspaper clipping. "I found this about Mr. Jensen," he said, pointing to his next-door neighbor who was once hailed as a community man, but now tethered to a series of mysterious disappearances that haunted the town decades ago. Folk tales her grandmother whispered to her echoed in her mind, reminding her of the darkness that could permeate the sweetest homes. As time ticked onward, the once safe streets transformed into a hunting ground of paranoia. Lisa's heart pounded, ripples of fear washing over her as she stole glances through the curtain. The calm evening air crackled with tension, even the rustle of leaves sounded foreboding. With no one to turn to, fear wasn't just a feeling but a living entity that wrapped around her throat like a noose. The familiar warmth of community had faded, replaced now by a suffocating shroud of avoidance. "Mom," Miles shot her a startled look, his eyes wide. "I saw him again," he said, voice barely above a whisper. A cold sweat dripped down her back as she acknowledged the unsettling scratching sound just beyond the window. Lisa bit her lip, senses alert, trembling hands clutching the back of the couch as she turned towards the night's empty embrace. Heart racing in her chest, she peered out, each beat thumping against her ribs. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let us continue. A pair of predatory eyes sliced through the darkness, locking onto her with a malevolent intensity. Shadows twisted and curled around the figure, making its presence feel as real as the thundering of her heart. Was this truly just her imagination, or was it rooted in the very soil of dread Mr. Jensen had sown? A sinister promise lingered in the air around her. There was a feeling, a realization that tonight was only the beginning. They had stumbled into something deeply dark, a nightmare not just woven from shadows but suspended in the flesh. Items went missing, children disappeared, long-forgotten tales into the evening's embrace. With Jake's low growl vibrating through the floorboards, the dread creeping through Lisa's veins electrified her. This wasn't just a restless spirit or a wandering drifter. No, this feeling reached deeper, slicing right into the flesh of her soul. As her breath quickened, dread wrapped around her heart tighter than an iron vice. What lurked just beyond her window? And in the haunting grip of night, how far would she go to protect Miles from the shadows that awaited? The scratching noise intensified, a clawing insistence at the edge of her understanding, forcing Lisa to fight against the stinging fear that fogged her mind. She willed herself to move, to cross the space between certainty and terror. With a trembling hand, she grasped the curtain, its fabric slick and coarse beneath her fingers. As she tugged it aside, the dim light from the street lamp spilled into the living room like a timid visitor. Her breath hitched as shockwaves of ice coursed through her veins. The darkness did not reveal any sign of a human. No figure stood there laughing in the shadows. Instead, a vast emptiness grinned back at her. Just silence and night. But the feeling in her bones told her otherwise. Something daunting lurked out there, just out of sight. "Mom, close it," Miles urged, his voice rising in pitch. His small body shook with fear, little hands gripping his knees like a lifeline. She felt the weight of his panic, the urge to obey, but it was as if the unsettling darkness beyond was siphoning away her strength. "Just a minute," she whispered, her eyes still trained on the void. Then she caught at a flicker of movement in the periphery, a dark shape slinking along the tree line, tracing a path towards her home. "Look!" Miles pointed, voice quaking now like a brittle leaf. Lisa turned, eyes tearing away from the curtain. But it was too late, the shadow darted deep into the depths, gone before she could fully register it. Was that more than just her mind? Did it know she was watching? The power surged in the house, lights flickering fury as your breath turned jagged. Lisa's heart thundered louder than ever. A horrifying thought gripped her. What if Mr. Jensen was home? What if he had already made his choice? Jake, sensing her growing tension, bolted across the room and barked ferociously at the window. His deep growl vibrated against her skin. It was both a warning and a prayer. The shadows outside seemed to rear back in response, almost recoiling from the force of his presence. "Jake, stop!" she commanded, but her voice quaked. She flipped the deadbolt to the front door. How primitive the gesture felt. Could a simple lock seal out the encroaching panic? Her mind spun like a twisted carnival ride, all flinging dread and wild chaos. Placing herself in front of Miles, she whispered to him, "Stay close. We need to go to my room." She shifted backward, eyes glued to the window. If she moved quickly, maybe they could fortify themselves behind the heavy door that felt like an iron wall. In an instant, the doorbell rang violently, a sound so shrill it pierced through the thick fog of her fear. Lisa recoiled, her instincts screamed at her to ignore it. Who could it be at this hour? Was it him? "Mom! Answer it!" Miles begged, a panic rising higher within him. "No! Stay still!" She responded fiercely, but inside, her mind was battling its own demons. The suddenness of the ring seemed like it was taunting her, demanding to be let in. What if it was someone innocent? What if it masked something far more sinister? The chilling laughter of Mr. Jensen echoed in her thoughts, mixing with the sharp flutter of her heart. Could she unravel the truth hidden behind the terrified eyes of her child, now filled with doubt? "What do we do?" Miles pleaded, clutching her arm. As Lisa's throat tightened, the scratching noise returned, sharper this time, as if the shadows were clawing in desperation to be let inside. And amid the chaos brewing in her mind, a horrifying thought pressed against her skull. What if that laughter wasn't just in her imagination but reality? Poised right on her doorstep, just before she could decide, the door creaked open. It wasn't the wind. The darkness seeped into the room, consuming the light. What awaited her now wasn't just a home invaded by dread, it was a battle against something that had been watching all along, and just as she prepared to confront the unknown, a child's scream shattered the night. What had she really brought into her home? Miles's scream sliced through the atmosphere, a raw, undiluted cry that made Lisa's blood run cold. The sound put her on high alert, brain racing for solutions, finding none. She blinked against the encroaching darkness, heart hammering against her ribs as if trying to burst free. "Mom!" Miles's voice quivered, thick with fear, snapping her focus back to him. There was something in his wide eyes, a terror she'd never wanted to witness, a truth he could sense but couldn't articulate. Before she could respond, the lights flickered menacingly, a series of disconnected pulses like a heartbeat in distress. The rhythmic thumps of her own heart overloaded her mind as she dropped to her knees beside Miles. "Think, Lisa," she urged herself. Maybe it was a neighbor at the door, a prank, perhaps? No, that laugh twisted through every corner of her imagination. It wasn't just a joke anymore, it danced with malicious intent. "Where's Jake?" she whispered urgently, glancing around for the dog that had been barking just moments before. Panic seeped into her bones as she realized he'd gone quiet. "Stay here." She squeezed Miles's shoulder before creeping along the wall toward the hallway that led to the back door. The scratching continued, every scratch a reminder that something was wrong. Something was wrong with her home, and it was coming for them. With each step, every creak of the floorboards beneath her feet felt like a siren calling her toward danger. Darkness groaned, shifting like a predator, and the air seemed heavy with something dark and smothering. She wouldn't let it win. As she reached the kitchen, the faint outline of Jake glimmered in the dim backlight filtering through the open sliding door. But he wasn't barking, he was just staring, frozen in place. That's when she saw a flicker of movement in the shadows beyond the door, something long and sinewy edging closer. "Jake," she hissed, her voice tight, pulling him back from the brink with a quiet urgency. The dog's ears perked up, eyes darting toward her, and then he growled softly, a low rumble that vibrated through the walls. Fear surged, and she backed away slowly, watching the creature just outside the boundary of light. Miles's breaths were shallow behind her, and she could sense his dread wrapping around them, tightening like a vice. The scratching at the front door increased, desperate and wild, as if whatever was out there was trying to claw its way through. "Mom, what's happening?" Miles pleaded, rising slightly to peek around her. "Stay down," she snapped, her eyes never leaving the flicker at the edge of darkness. The sliding door began to creak ever so slowly, the sound slithering down her spine. No, it shouldn't be open. Did she leave it unlocked? The pull to check was overwhelming. But she hesitated, gnawing at her nails, every instinct urging her to flee, to hide. The rustle outside was louder now, abrupt and violent, as if the darkness itself was angry at being watched. The lights blinked once more, and in that brief moment of illumination, she caught a full glimpse of what lurked beyond the door, tall, gaunt, a shadow of limbs and eyes that burned like tiny embers. "Mom!" Miles squeaked, terror gripping him. Suddenly, the lights flickered for the last time, plunging them into an even deeper darkness, thick and choking. Lisa's breath hitched as the silence engulfed her, heart hammering in her ears. And just as she opened her mouth to shatter the quiet with a command, something shattered the glass of the back door. The sleek silhouette lunged into the kitchen, a dark force that promised chaos and despair. "Run!" she screamed, the command exploding from her throat like a thunderclap, but as they turned to flee, the shadows seemed to close in, as if the house were in on it too, holding them captive. And just as her foot touched the first step on the staircase, a whisper, icy and slithering, coiled around her ear. Don't go. What had she brought into her home, and was it already too late to turn back? She had barely made it halfway up the staircase when a frigid gust of air swept through the house, extinguishing what little remained of her resolve. Chills raced down her spine, an insistent proof that they weren't alone. "Mom, hurry!" Miles urged, still crouched low, eyes darting wildly. He was scrambling back from the edge as the darkness crept closer, tendrils reaching out from the corners of each shadow. Lisa's heart thundered in her chest, time moving in a sluggish crawl. The kitchen light flickered back on just long enough to illuminate the figure standing in the doorway. It was tall, impossibly slender, with limbs that seemed to stretch and bend at unnatural angles. The eyes merciless, pinpricks of crimson seemed to search for something beyond her, beyond them both. "Run!" she screamed again, willing her feet to move, the urgency crashing over her like waves. The staircase creaked ominously as they hurried up, Lisa shoving Miles ahead of her. They stumbled into the hall, breathless and wild-eyed, the shadows swirling relentlessly around them. She could hear the horror gathering speed behind them as the thing moved, its steps fluid and silent, like a predator stalking prey. She skated into the nearest room, the study, and slammed the door shut behind them, pressing her back against it, heart hammering like a drum. The old wood felt worn and fragile beneath her hands. "Mom," Miles whispered, voice trembling. "What is it?" She turned, eyes wide and frantic. "I don't know. But we have to find a way out." The silence was suffocating, broken only by the hollow thuds of her racing heart. They stood together, shivering in the dim light, while shadows danced across the walls like mocking phantoms. Lisa scanned the room, searching for anything that could help. A window? The thought sent a fresh spark of panic into her veins. Outside, the darkness loomed, but it had to be better than this place. She motioned to Miles, keeping her voice low. "We'll check the window, okay?" Creeping toward it, her mind raced. Memories of the dog's growls echoed in her ears, a warning from a trusted companion now lost somewhere in the chaos. She reached for the latch, but the connection snapped too suddenly, and the window wouldn't budge. "Mom!" Miles grasped her arm, eyes wide with fear. "It's coming." She whipped around just as the door rattled violently, splintering the wood like a punch. Her chest tightened with dread. No time. They needed to move. "Follow me," she shouted, adrenaline driving her forward. They darted toward the far side of the room where a closet huddled. But just as she yanked the door open, a searing pain cut through her hand. A splinter from the broken doorframe jabbed deep into her skin. "Mom!" Miles cried, unsure whether to help or hide. "Just get in," she choked out, trying to stifle the panic beginning to spiral around them. They squished into the cramped darkness, hearts racing in unison, limbs tangled. The door behind them was an echoing mess, splinters giving way to a cracking, twisted sound. As they huddled, the door burst open. Something dark slithered its way in, almost liquid, sinister and crawling. It filled the space, pushing against their breath, thick like mud. Miles whimpered, clutching her tighter. Lisa's world narrowed, swallowed by shadow. Her mind ran wild, unable to comprehend the horror stretching before them. In that moment, she knew they had nowhere to go, nowhere to hide. The darkness enveloped them, a suffocating blanket of despair. And then, a soft voice echoed through the chamber of horrors, dripping with malice. "You can't escape." Desperation took hold. Could they fight what was waiting for them? Or was it already too late? The silence shattered like glass. Lisa's heart raced, her breath caught in her throat as the darkness pulsed and writhed around them. The voice, it was low, hypnotic, and cruel, vibrating against her skin. "Where are you?" It taunted, slipping into the corners of her mind, probing for her fears. Panic ignited a primal instinct, a desperate urge to escape this haunting. She felt the oppressive weight of malevolence pressing closer, like fingers curling around her throat. "Miles," she whispered, voice shaking. "Stay quiet." But the tiny hand in hers tightened as the shadows surged forward, hungry to consume. With each slow, deliberate motion, the darkness coiled closer, tendrils sneaking through the cracks of the closet door, tasting the air hungrily. "Mom! What do we do?" Miles's voice was a fragile thread, ready to snap. His breath hitched, composing an internal struggle between fear and the chaotic need to fight. Lisa clamped down on his shoulder, feeling the warmth of his small body against the chill of terror. "We have to wait, just a little longer." Time warped, stretching unbearably. She felt every second a burning eternity where shadows danced and circled them, eager to snuff out their light, their hope. Then it happened. A claw-like hand, thin and elongated, slipped through a gap in the closet door. Lisa froze, a scream choking her throat. The fingers were gnarled, ending in jagged nails that scraped against wood like a whisper of doom. "Mama!" Miles bolted upright, breaking the silence with his wild thrashing. But Lisa held him tighter, refusing to let fear tear them apart. "Shoo! Miles, we can't let it hear us." She scanned for anything to anchor her thoughts. But it was a futile search. The room seemed impossibly empty and void, without weapon or salvation. All they had was each other. The grip of the shadows tightened as a low, guttural sound rumbled. It echoed in her chest, resonating deep within the dark corners of her mind, reviving childhood fears long thought buried. The slithering mass undulated, stretching beneath them. The ground felt alive, alive with evil. Mom, Miles whimpered. Gritting her teeth, she knew they couldn't stay hidden forever. The fear of being devoured by darkness was eclipsed only by the dread of being discovered. They needed a plan, a way to outsmart whatever was closing in on them. Listen to me, we're going to make a break for it. On 3. 3? Miles's little voice quivered. Yes. 1, 2. She paused, feeling the creeping dread that all her hope might just slip away. 3. They erupted into action, bursting from the closet like trapped air released. The shadows recoiled, but not before something cold brushed against her leg. An icy finger sending a jolt of terror through her. Lisa gasped, but there was no time for fear, not now. They dashed toward the far side of the room. The flickering light above them wavered and then exploded, sending glass shattering into the darkness. The sudden brightness revealed a glimpse of the figure looming in the doorway, thin, horrid, a nightmarish silhouette with red eyes that burned like dying embers. Run! She yelled, voice raw, adrenaline pumping. They bolted into the hallway, the gaping maw of the unknown ahead, but a crash behind them sent her heart into a tailspin. The monstrous figure was pursuing, every crunch of glass beneath their feet a sinister reminder they were not safe. They dashed through the hall, knowing they needed a way out. The front door was just ahead, so close, but would they make it? With wild determination, Lisa reached for the handle, only to find it locked tight. The thing was closing in, breathless and relentless. It exhaled a sickly sweet stench, mingling with fear and terror. Mom! Miles screamed, as darkness threatened to engulf them once more. In that moment, Lisa realized the truth. They weren't just running for survival, they were running out of options, out of time. They needed to confront the monster or become one with the void. What would they choose? Would they face it together, or would the shadows win? Lisa's heart thudded violently against her ribs, each beat a frantic reminder that time was evaporating. The monster's presence crawled up her spine, dark energy radiating from its ghastly form. Desperation fueled her next move. To the kitchen! She shouted, and pulled Miles along, their tiny footsteps echoing frantically against the otherwise silent house. They sprinted down the hallway, dodging debris that littered the floor, remnants of their earlier escape. Miles stumbled, briefly losing his grip on her hand, and dread twisted Lisa's stomach. She turned, her voice sharp and fierce, keep up. The air grew heavier, almost tangible, like it was alive and angry. Glancing back, she caught sight of the figure gliding after them, horrific and unyielding as if it had been plucked from a nightmare. Its grotesque mouth curved into a smile, pooling with darkness, a void so vast it swallowed every trace of hope. The kitchen loomed ahead, a beacon of fleeting safety. Lisa pushed through the door, her breath ragged. They skidded to a halt, eyes scanning for anything they could use. The kitchen felt oddly familiar and foreign, the shadows lurking in every corner like old friends turned enemies. Mom, what do we do? Miles panted, his tiny face pale and strained with fear. But Lisa didn't have an answer, couldn't see a way out. The coffee maker sputtered, igniting a weak glow, shadows flitting back as if even they feared the potential heat. A knife block caught her eye, she was no stranger to its cold steel. Grab anything! She shouted, urgency clawing at her throat. Miles nodded and clumsily reached for a frying pan, its surface cold and metallic. With each second, the atmosphere thickened. The pounding of her heart synchronized with the demonic laughter that echoed through the kitchen, reverberating off the walls. We can distract it. I'll hold it off. Lisa decided, her voice more confident than she felt. The flickering light from the stovetop illuminated the creature momentarily, revealing its elongated limbs and hollow cheeks. Lisa felt bile rise in her throat at the sight. Miles, remember what I said about the oven? It gets really hot. Miles's eyes widened in realization, and he nodded, gripping his makeshift weapon tighter. I'll do it. Just keep it busy. The entity slithered closer, crawling in an eerie fashion, each moment stretching impossibly long. Lisa held the knife in trembling fingers, her resolve coating the fear that threatened to engulf her. As it stepped into the light, she caught sight of its glistening eyes, black, empty, and piercing through her soul. Get away from us! She screamed, closing the gap between them. The knife felt slippery, but she steadied her grip. Come on, you overgrown insect. At her sudden noise, the creature hesitated, its stare drew closer, unrelenting. Miles darted to the stove, fumbling with the knobs. She could feel the heat begin to emanate, but the repulsive creature advanced, drawing nearer, hunger glistening in its unholy eyes. Miles! Now! Lisa urged, fear creeping into her voice. With a swift twist, Miles turned the burner on high, flames licking greedily at the air. The monster recoiled, hissing, throwing showers of ash into the space between them. The moment hung thick with tension. Lisa felt her own breath constrict. Stand back! She shouted, a desperate plea more than a command. But before she could lash out, darkness surged, and the figure lunged at her, mouth wide, teeth dripping with anticipation. She swung the knife, aiming for the heart of its shadowy form. It slipped through her fingers, an illusion, leaving only a chill that seeped into her very being. Panic seized her as she staggered back, realizing it had morphed. It was everywhere and nowhere. An image formed in her mind. Could they create a barrier? Suddenly, the heat in the kitchen grew unbearable. The flames roared with hunger, a malevolent counterpart to the creature's laughter. Mom! Miles cried out again, fear clinging to every syllable. But was it too late? The flames danced wildly, the shadows swirling, leaving no escape. As the creature lunged again, Lisa made her choice, the final act of desperation. Would the heat consume them all, or would it be the darkness that claimed victory? The answer loomed as the shadows rushed forward, threatening to envelop everything, and just outside, the faint sound of a door creaking open whispered promises of salvation or peril. What awaited them just beyond the threshold? Lisa's instinct screamed for her to move, to fight against the encroaching tendrils of darkness. As she turned to Miles, desperation painted across her face, she forced out the words through clenched teeth, "Get ready." The creature recoiled, its laughter morphing into a low growl, the sound sending shivers down her spine. Flames crackled, illuminating the kitchen in flickers of orange and red, casting grotesque shadows that twisted and lunged like the monster itself. Lisa gripped the knife tighter, her knuckles white against the cold steel, while Miles fidgeted, his frying pan raised like a shield. "Come on, you thing!" Lisa spat, hoping to provoke it, knowing time was running out. The creature paused, its attention snaking towards her, sensing her fear as if it fed on it. It began to glide toward her, an unnatural grace that unsettled the very ground beneath her feet. In that moment, she felt time stretch. She only had a few precious seconds before it struck. From the corner of her eye, she saw the oven, its door slightly ajar, a flicker of maddening heat escaping. "The oven, Miles. Turn it up." Without hesitation, he scrambled to the stove. Desperation flashed in his eyes, but obedience rose above it as he twisted the dial, flames roaring higher. The air thickened, hot and suffocating around them, like a beast breathing down her neck. "Run!" Lisa shouted as the monster lunged, jaws widened, ready to consume them. She shoved Miles, guiding him towards the window. It was their last chance. "We need to break through." But even as she maneuvered, she felt the darkness rushing around her like a pit of snakes, trailing fingers grazing against her skin, leaving frigid exhaustion in their wake. Miles's small hands fumbled with the latch, and Lisa glanced back, catching a glimpse of the creature. The void of its mouth seemed endless, hungry. She had no choice. "Get out!" she demanded, voice hoarse. A feeling of protection stirred deep inside, overriding her terror. As the window creaked under pressure, the monster wailed, a horrible sound that knocked the breath out of her. Shadows skewered the kitchen in a whirlwind of rage. The roar of flames was no longer a comfort, but a threat, promising to swallow them whole. In an instant, Miles slipped through. Relief washed over Lisa, even as she turned to face the chaos behind her. The hellish grin of the creature was closer, eyes gleaming as it lunged towards her mom. Miles screamed, his small hands reaching out. Lisa thrust the knife into the nearest shadow, feeling the chill course through her body as darkness hissed in fury. It wasn't enough, it would never be enough. She darted for the window, adrenaline coursing through her veins, but as she reached the ledge, a cold grip clamped around her ankle. No! She gasped. The creature pulled, its sharp teeth gleaming, and terror surged through her veins. It would drag her back into the abyss, away from her son. Lisa kicked, swung, fought against the grip that promised to take her. With one final, desperate push, she lunged towards the opening, and her heart soared when she felt the release. She clambered out, arms straining, landing hard on the ground, scraping her palms against the unforgiving dirt. But the moment of joy was ephemeral. Behind her, the kitchen erupted in flames, a blinding light, the air filled with the acrid scent of burning wood. Yet the darkness didn't fade. Instead, it slithered through the broken window, a formless predator angry at the loss, the thrill of the chase crackling like electricity. Miles! Lisa cried, her voice breaking. They stumbled backwards, both breathless, terror pooling at their feet. Did we escape? But the answer was evident in the darkness that loomed over them, wreathing everything in a sinister canopy. It was still close. She could feel it. Mom, what do we do? Miles shivered, his tiny face pale, reflecting the hell unfolding behind them. Before Lisa could respond, the air shifted. The remaining shadows shuddered and swirled around them, morphing into something far worse. An eerie whisper curled around her head, coiling tightly. Do you think you can escape me? The voice melded with the winds, taunting, and a sense of dread crept in. What had they really left behind? In the shuffle of panic, the faint creaking door from earlier beckoned once more, opening like a chapter yet unwritten. Beyond it, promises of salvation or a deeper nightmare lingered, ready to prey on their fears, waiting for them to make a choice. Lisa took a step toward the door, uncertainty clawing at her mind. Should they venture into the unknown, or face the darkness they had narrowly escaped? The decision hung like a noose around their necks, and the path ahead remained shrouded in fear. Lisa's heart raced, the pounding echoing in her ears as she faced the door. It loomed before them, creaking ominously, inviting yet terrifying. She glanced back at the inferno behind her, flames now clawing at the sky, hungry and wild. That darkness, the creature, was still lurking, biding its time. Miles, we need to decide. Now! She urged, trying to keep panic from creeping into her voice. Tears glistened in Miles's eyes, reflecting the flickers of fire. But, what if it's worse inside? His small voice trembled. Lisa felt that weight in her gut. What lay beyond could be just as dangerous, or even more deadly. But what was the alternative? The monster was relentless. Shadows danced around their feet, crawling closer, eager to engulf them. It's our only choice. We can't go back. She cried, sensing the awareness of darkness tightening around them like a vice. Trust me, baby. With a nod filled more with fear than conviction, Miles reached for her hand. She squeezed it tightly, a lifeline in the storm. They stepped toward the door together, the threshold stretching so unnaturally as they moved. As they crossed the barrier, the air shifted immediately. It was cooler but thicker, like stepping into a dense fog. The whispers intensified, wrapping around her mind, murmuring secrets in a language she couldn't understand. Their eyes adjusted to the dim light, revealing a narrow hallway lined with faded portraits of unnamed faces. Each seemed to live in their own eternal suffering, shadows flickering across their features as if the darkness inside demanded to escape. She felt a chill, a desperate urge to turn back. But behind her, the crackle of the fire shattered the night, and the creature's laughter rang out a dark promise of doom. "Mom," Miles murmured, gripping her hand tighter. "Stay close," she whispered back, forcing her eyes forward. They moved slowly, as if the air itself was trying to hold them back. Each step deepened the sense of dread that clawed at her throat. Suddenly, a door at the end of the hall creaked open by itself, light spilling from the crack, contrasting sharply with the shadows. A soft voice drifted through, mesmerizing and haunting. "Come and play," each syllable twisted like a knife in her stomach, filling her with dread yet also a morbid curiosity. It sounded so innocent, but Lisa could tell it was a trap, a siren's call into the inescapable abyss. "No, don't go," Miles protested, pulling away. But the strange voice seemed to know they were there, knew their fears. "You want to be safe? You want to know what's behind the door?" The walls began to hum, a low, thrumming sound that resonated inside her chest and made it hard to think. Something compelled her to approach the light, but Lisa fought back, her instinct screaming at her. Then, like an electric bolt, a crash came from the other side. The door flickered, shadowy forms thrashed against it. An ominous threat resonated from the depths. It was the creature, now far too close for comfort. "Miles, run!" Lisa yelled, pulling him toward the end of the hallway where the voice beckoned, battling against instinct to pull them back. They reached the door, throwing it open. It swung wide, revealing a vast empty room. The moment they set foot inside, a bone-chilling cold replaced the warmth of the hall. Lisa's breath hitched as she saw figures move in the corners, watching from the shadows. "Miles, stay with me," she shouted, but her son stood frozen, staring wide-eyed at the entity rising from the center, a mass of dark energy, fluid and formless. "Mom," he whispered in horror. The being swirled toward them, eyes glowing and filled with darkness, a predator ready to strike. "You thought you could escape?" it hissed, and in that moment, Lisa knew this was just the beginning of their nightmare. As the creature lunged, she felt the weight of despair settle in like a stone. Would they face it together, or would they become just more shadows lost to this realm? With terror gripping her heart, she braced herself, unsure of what may come next. But one thing was clear: they had unleashed something much darker than they could have ever imagined. The creature lunged, a swirling void of terror, consuming the space as it surged toward them. "Miles!" Lisa cried out, her voice a sharpened thread of panic slicing through the ice of the room. But then, the air shifted again. A pressure, heavy and palpably dark, pressed against Lisa's chest. Time slowed. She saw the creature's jagged maw open wide, a gaping chasm filled with shadows. It felt as though it was pulling her in, a swirling vortex that wanted nothing more than her despair, her fear. She grasped Miles, pulling him away just in time as the creature's tendrils missed them by inches, striking the ground with a sickening thud, a sound like bones cracking underfoot. "Mom, please!" Miles whimpered, backing away. His gaze darted around the room, searching for an escape. Shadows loomed at the edges, whispering promises, mocking their fear, coaxing them to stay. "Over there." The door. Lisa pointed to a corner of the room where a heavy, ornate door stood slightly ajar, moonlight spilling through the gap like a ghostly beacon. With every step they took toward the door, the creature shrieked, an unholy sound that vibrated through Lisa's bones. She felt it claw at her mind, whispering her darkest fears of failing to protect her son, of succumbing to that void. "Miles, don't look back," she commanded, voice taut with urgency. But instinct drew Miles to glance over his shoulder. The creature's form shifted, rising taller, angrier as tendrils reached out, splitting the shadows with desperate hunger. "Run!" Lisa shouted as she shoved the door open, the screeching hinges echoing like a warning bell. They stumbled into the next room, a dark void that welcomed them with chilling silence. Inside, The room was an archaic library, filled with towering shelves of dust-covered books. Riddles of ancient scripts and faded photographs whispered lost stories. But Lisa's eyes darted, searching for a weapon, a means to fight back. "Miles, hide!" she urged, pushing him beneath a nearby table. He crawled beneath the wood, fear painted on his small face. As she turned, the door slammed shut behind her, sealing them in, and a chill swept through the room, snuffing out any remaining warmth. The light from the moon, once a guide, flickered, casting shadows that swirled ominously against the walls. "Mokul," a voice called, soft yet venomous, rippling through the air. The books trembled as if responding to the name, and a shudder ran down Lisa's spine. It felt wrong. "Who is Mokul?" she whispered, breaking the unnerving silence. The presence seemed to swell, circling around her, its breath like ice on her neck. "You are not alone," that voice, mocking and joyous, surged through her veins. With a surge of courage, she shouted into the void, "Show yourself." In an instant, the shadows coalesced into a figure, a man, but not just any man. His eyes glistened with something ancient, something malevolent. "Mokul was powerful, but who are you?" he jeered, tilting his head, inspecting her as if she was a specimen. "More powerful than you think," Lisa hissed, heart racing, desperation mingling with anger. The figure's mouth curled into a smile, revealing teeth sharp and elongated. "Is that so? Just wait until Mokul returns." Corded tension coiled around her like a snake poised to strike, grinding her heart into her throat. The figure extended his hand, beckoning her closer. A promise. A threat. A shiver of terror rippled through Lisa as the echo of the creature's laughter returned, distant but unmistakable. The weight of choices loomed over her like shadows, and she realized the cycle of horror continued. "Miles." She crouched low, reaching for her son. But the moment she turned, the chilling presence flourished, shifting against her, pulling her toward the center of the room. As the darkness surged, thick like fog, Lisa's scream mingled into the void. In the chaos, she caught a glimpse of Miles trapped beneath the table, eyes wide with terror. She would not let the same fate befall him. In that moment, she felt it, a sliver of hope, a flicker of strength. Gripping the nearest book, she hurled it toward the figure. "You will not take us." The book flew, striking the figure, and with that impact, the air pulsed. With one last glance back at the horrifying silhouette, she grabbed Miles and dashed for the heavy door, adrenaline igniting every ounce of survival instinct. It slammed open. Would they find escape? But as they crossed the threshold, laughter erupted behind them, a sound promise of nightmares yet to come. "What's waiting for us?" Miles asked, his voice trembling, filled with dread. Lisa held him tight, senses tingling with an impending sense of doom. "I don't know, but we have to keep moving." Together, they plunged into the darkness beyond, uncertainty clutching at their heels. What lay ahead would either be their salvation or another descent into hell. Lisa and Miles stumbled into the black void of the next room, breathless and terrified, unsure what awaited them. The shadows encroached, hungry and malicious, but Lisa felt a surge of determination blaze in her heart. She couldn't let the darkness snatch them away. "Miles, keep your eyes open," she whispered urgently, scanning their surroundings. Flickering lights barely illuminated the jagged outlines of the walls, but she could feel a shift in the air, a familiar taunting presence lurking just out of view. "Where are we?" Miles asked, voice shaky, his little fingers curling tightly around her arm. "I don't know, but we can't stop moving," Lisa replied, forcing herself to breathe. Panic clawed at her throat, but she couldn't give in to fear. Not now, not when they were so close to hopelessness. They continued through the damp, empty room, shadows dancing along the walls. With every step, Lisa scanned for any sign of escape. The atmosphere thickened, wrapping around her like a shroud, whispering secrets of despair. They needed a plan, and fast. Suddenly, there it was, a glimmer of silver. An old rusted door handle a few feet away caught her eye, half hidden in the dark. "Miles!" she called, hope flaring within her. "Over there." Together they rushed towards it, each step igniting a spark of urgency. Miles reached it first, his tiny fingers gripping the handle, a sense of purpose replacing fear. "It's stuck!" he shouted, twisting it with all his might. "Try pushing," Lisa said, leaning in beside him as they both shoved against the door, their strength mingling into a single push. A low groan reverberated through the wood, but the door resisted, stubborn like darkness itself. "Mom, I don't think it's," Miles started, fear creeping back in. "Just a little more," she urged, gritting her teeth. Heart racing, desperation boiled over. Reaching deep inside, she found the courage left in her. Together, on 3. 1, 2, 3. With all their might, they heaved forward, and the door burst open. Light, bright and blinding, flooded in like a wave crashing over them. In that moment of chaotic brilliance, they stumbled into a new realm, tumbling onto the soft grass of a moonlit field, surrounded by the warm scent of flowers. They lay there, gasping for breath, the bizarre shift of atmosphere almost disorienting. "What just happened?" Miles whispered, looking around, confusion dancing in his eyes. "I don't know," she murmured, relief flooding her veins like a balm. They were outside, away from that terrible place. But the echoes of previous horrors clung to the air, an invisible weight pressing in. "Emon!" Miles exclaimed suddenly, pointing. Across the field, silhouetted against the surreal backdrop of moonlight and trees, stood a figure. "No!" Lisa's heart plummeted. "Not again." But as they scrambled to their feet, the figure stepped into the light, illuminating a familiar face. Mr. Jensen, her neighbor, but dressed in ordinary clothes, a welcoming smile dancing across his features. "Hey there, want to play?" A sickening chill pulsed through her. This wasn't the end. Quickly, she turned to Miles, his small hand grasped tightly in hers. "We need to go. Run." They tore through the field, fueled by adrenaline, the deceptively peaceful landscape morphing into a dizzying blur. Behind them, the laughter echoed again, a sound woven with malice and familiarity. "Where do we go?" Miles gasped, fear spilling through every syllable. "Anywhere but here," Lisa shouted, her heart pounding loud and frantic. They broke through the tree-line and plunged deeper into the woods, branches clawing at them like desperate fingers. With each moment, the shadows appeared to thicken, swirling ominously, igniting her instinct to run faster. This darkness felt alive, a slithering beast hungry to reclaim its prey. "Emon!" Miles cried, but she couldn't stop. Couldn't let the encroaching terror wrap around them again. As if in response to their flight, a path unfurled before them, illuminated by the dying light of a street lamp up ahead. It was the light of home, she thought. "Keep running, just a little further," she urged, her legs pumping hard against the earth. The pull of safety sang in her veins, solidifying her will to protect him. With sharp breaths, the light grew nearer, its familiarity breaking through the suffocating darkness. When they finally reached it, they skidded to a stop, gasping, limbs trembling. Then, amidst the shadows creeping ever closer, Lisa grasped the door handle of her house, her heart racing uncontrollably. "We need to lock this door." With trembling fingers, she swung the door open as the darkness slashed through the trees behind them. They stumbled inside, the familiar scent of home wrapping around them like a protective shield. But Lisa knew it wouldn't last. "Lock it!" she yelled, and Miles secured the deadbolt just in time. Outside, a wailing howl erupted, a twisted retort of fury echoing against the walls. "Did we make it?" Miles asked, his breath heavy, face pale with fear. "I think so," Lisa whispered, fighting to keep her voice steady, yet inside, dread clawed at her guts. "But we have to stay vigilant. This might only be the calm before the storm." As they caught their breath, the tendrils of darkness clawed restlessly at the windows, searching for a way back in, laughter echoing through the air in cruel waves. With resolve tightening in her chest, Lisa embraced Miles tightly, her fierce love encasing them like armor. "We'll stand together," she promised. "Whatever comes next, we'll face it as one." In that moment, she knew they would never be free of the shadows. But they weren't defeated. Together, they'd fight against whatever lurked just beyond the door, and together, they would claim their future back from the darkness. But first, they had to survive the night, so don't let your escape stop here. You must subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this finale. And for the love of all that's eerie, instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this conclusion. You need to support the channel. This is the moment to show your loyalty as true fans. Don't wait even one more second to share.